Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another live stream here on the channel. I apologize if I sound strange. I just jumped out of bed and went live. We just got an upgrade to a moderate risk for severe weather today. A lot of new information. So let's dive right on into it. Oh, man. Yeah, it definitely looked like I just woke up. Oh man, hey, this outlook looks exactly like my outlook from 48 hours ago. It's a miracle. I mean, I wish I could show you guys. It is almost a replica of the outlook that I made 48 hours ago with the very first HRRR that we got for today. So it's crazy. It's crazy how far forecasting's come. I wish I could really show you guys that outlook, because it's literally like a one-for-one replica. And the probabilities are exactly the same. The SPC has upgraded to a 60 sig 1 wind risk. I have that. I put that in there in my outlook 48 hours ago. And the SPC also upgraded to a 15% sig 2. And guess what? I had that as well in my outlook. So it's absolutely crazy. I don't think I've ever nailed an outlook that crazy before. That is the first time I've nailed an outlook 48 hours in advance like that. Absolutely insane. But yeah, we have an ongoing likely very intense MCS2 derecho right now, heading into Davenport. So I decided, you know what, this could very well be the main event today, if it does continue to progress eastward into our main risk area. And the last thing I want to do is hold off on the live stream and wait for the afternoon storms. And the afternoon storms are not even close to as significant as these. So I want to go ahead and hop on here and start covering this for you guys. Glad to see you guys in the chat. We have Catman, Caleb, Cody, Proxy, Ohio, Brooklyn. Hey, Brooklyn. Glad to see you back in here. Critty, Grumpy Grandpa, Ponderosa, Johnny, Justin. And we also have Lozy in here as well. Glad to see you guys all in here for another live stream. Also, I'm not sure how to say your username, but the person from Italy is in here as well. What time is it over there in Italy? It ought to be, it ought to be later in the day. It ought to be in the afternoon or maybe in the evening. If I'm just thinking of time zones, the further east you go, the later it's going to get. So it should be in the afternoon or evening out there. But yeah, we have a very intense MCS here. You could see these damaging winds going into Iowa City right now, heading towards Davenport, upwards of 70, 80 mile an hour wind gusts moving into Davenport, Eldridge, and LeClaire. Same exact area we were talking about last night, getting this morning MCS. And this is the morning MCS. And you'll obviously see why I'm questioning the afternoon round. This is a very significant, huge MCS. This is not a small morning round of convection or one or two supercells. This is a line of an MCS, and if it keeps going, it would eventually be classified as a likely derecho, I'd have to imagine. So I'm actually very much now questioning a 15 sig Tor, a 15 sig 2 tornado risk that the SPC has put out here. I'm not sure if that's going to be able to verify with such an MCS propagating eastward over the risk area. The wind risk will most definitely verify as a 45 or a 60 sig 1 wind risk, but I'm a little bit questioning the tornado threat with how widespread of an MCS this is. It is definitely going to be a tricky to get significant destabilization behind this. Michael here from Brandon, Florida. Welcome to the stream. Glad we're not talking about that area that much recently. Hasn't been anything too significant in Florida this year so far. From what I recall, nothing too over the top. Good to see you too, Backroads Josh. Thank you for the kind words. Glad to see you in the chat. And hopefully, for anybody in front of this, you guys are heeding the watch. We're going to have to watch it very, very, very closely. It's a tricky ordeal here. We're not sure if this MCS is going to be able to rapidly intensify and continue eastward and be a huge, severe threat, or if it's just going to die off and then our afternoon round is going to go absolutely crazy. So there's high uncertainty on what this MCS is going to do here as it progresses into Davenport. All of our models show it dying off, all of them. So if this gets east of Davenport here and it gets towards Rockford in this area and it's still alive, that's a good sign to sign off for the day. That's a good sign to, yeah, this is done. But if it doesn't, if it does indeed die out, yeah, we're looking at a very, very significant day, closer to 4 p.m. Eastern time. And that would definitely start up, those severe storms would start sparking up at about 3 o'clock in southeast Iowa. And right now, that's what the HRRR is kind of showing. This MCS dies off here in about 2 or 3 hours. And then our main event sparks up about 2 hours after that. So we have this tornado watch out, which is decently high probability. This was put out earlier today. It goes till 4 p.m. Eastern. That is a moderate threat for tornadoes, a 50-30 tornado watch there. The wind risk is 90-50, so very significant amount of damaging winds likely, with very widespread damaging winds likely. Also 1 to 2 inch hail possible as well. Will I be live later? Either I'm hoping to get a break-in sometime here in a few hours in between round 1 and round 2, so I can actually eat food today. That would probably be nice, but who knows? I may not get a break today with how significant it looks like. We're looking at a very, very notable day for significant severe weather across this area. I'm waiting for that new HRRR to render in because I want to go ahead and show y'all it. This is generally what we're thinking for today. We're generally thinking that this MCS ongoing right now across Davenport, this is generally what the radar should look like right about now. You can see it's not exactly a 1-to-1 ratio. Our line is definitely a bit stronger than what the HRRR is showing here. But you could generally see our MCS pushes eastward and it dies out close to like north central Illinois around the Chicago area about 2 o'clock Eastern. So about 3, maybe a little more than 3 hours today. And if we go and pull that out further, you could see the environment does recover pretty well. Definitely recovers pretty well, but it's very, very close. Your primary environment for tornadoes stops at that line right there, and your most favorable environment for tornadoes stops at this line. So if we take a look at where storms are orientated to those two lines, it's extremely, extremely close for that highest risk of tornadoes today. And a little bit messy on the HRRR as well. But you could see still looks like a big day of afternoon and evening significant severe weather appears likely across central Illinois, northern Illinois, maybe even into southern Wisconsin. And it all comes down to where this MCS is exactly going to be located and how far east it can propagate over the next few hours. And I imagine this storm down here is going to be generally where we start to see that convection in the afternoon. I'm not too sure if that's going to be pushing that far eastward here. If we go to your new HRRR, let's see what that has. You can see the new HRRR has that storm there in Unionville, of course, and that actually becomes some of our primary severe weather threat towards 3 p.m. So, interesting. Let's see, Waterloo, Iowa safe. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my other radar. Waterloo, Iowa is in a severe thunderstorm warning. You're not inside the highest severe weather threat today, but you did just go through a severe thunderstorm. So you're pretty much fine now. I think that's going to be your only main storm of the day. I wouldn't expect much more than some heavy rain later this afternoon and evening. That's probably going to be the only severe storm you end up with today. So I think Waterloo's fine. You still probably shouldn't go outside, but the worst is past Joel. And our biggest area for severe weather right now is going to be focused from Cedar Rapids back down to Columbus Junction and back into Mount Pleasant, Iowa. And that's going to head into Davenport, Iowa, and then eventually into Illinois. That's where we expect our greatest MCS threat over the next hour or so, right in there. And I think as that goes further into Illinois, somewhere right around Princeton, Dixon, somewhere around here, that's when this MCS should start weakening rapidly. And if it doesn't, we could be talking about some big problems for the overall severe weather threat actually verifying today. If we take a look at the SPC's tornado risk, you will notice their wind risk is further to the north than the tornado risk. The highest wind risk goes all the way up into Burlington, Wisconsin, whereas the tornado risk, the SIG 2 15% TOR, does not go anywhere into Wisconsin. So they are thinking that this MCS here, we can go on this is observations based off of the latest HRRR. Oh boy. Well, shoot. No kidding why they upgraded to moderate. Is that legit? Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah. No kidding why they upgraded to moderate risk. In front of this MCS, not a very favorable environment for continuation of severe storms. The main environment is back here. This MCS is fueled by only 500 cape, y'all. Wow. I'm surprised that's even able to sustain itself. Only fueled by about 500 cape there. Not a very favorable environment for severe weather there. So that should really promote this MCS to die out here pretty soon. We do have a tornado warning in effect here for North Liberty, but it's really not impressive. More worried about the damaging wind threat than the tornado threat right now. Tiffin, Iowa. Let me see Tiffin, Iowa here. You guys are in the tornado warning, so you should preferably be in your safe spot, even though the main tornadic storm is off to your northeast now. I would stay in your safe spot till that warning's lifted. You are somewhere right here. And, oh no, you're over here. There you are, Tifton. So if there is a tornado, there's a very high chance it would be back in here to y'all's east. And that is going to be expired in 14 minutes. And there will be the chance for another round later on today. But there's a lot of uncertainty on how far north that round will get. Right now, the HRRR does indeed have that round getting into Tifton, Iowa at about 3 p.m. Central. So you will have to watch very, very closely for a secondary round of significant severe weather. Yes, it is a moderate risk for severe weather today. They finally pulled the trigger after we pulled the trigger on the day 3 outlook. I did a day 3 moderate risk for severe weather, although I included probabilities because it was late at day 3. And the probabilities I put out in the Discord server 3 days ago are almost exactly where the SPC has their 15 sig 2 tour and their 60 sig 1 wind. And I do think we could see some expansion of that 45% wind risk a little bit further to the southeast, but that's generally what we're thinking today. I can really get behind this outlook. This is finally, after 2 days of what I would consider pretty poor SPC outlooks, this is finally an outlook I can get behind for today's severe weather outbreak. Finally, something that I can 100% agree with. It took a while, especially with the terrible outlook yesterday afternoon, but finally an outlook I can get behind. And I'm very happy to say that, because that really eases me and makes my job easier, because I can actually agree with the SPC. I can actually agree with the SPC here. Something that has just changed. Our severe thunderstorm warnings have been downgraded to 60. So this is really good news for Davenport and Burlington and Mount Pleasant right now. However, this is very bad news for later on today. Later on today, the weaker these storms are, the less of the environment they're going to take up. So this is really bad news for later this afternoon, but really good news for right now. So not as big of a severe threat imminently for Davenport, but that means a much higher severe threat later this afternoon. And the probably the thing I'm most curious about is these storms down here. How fast are y'all moving? They're moving at about 45 miles per hour, so that would put them in Burlington in about an hour and a half. The HRRR has those very, very slow, which I'm very curious about here. That's going to be a storm we might have to watch for a little bit higher severe weather potential here, as opposed to the storms going towards Davenport. Let's go back to our observations, and you can see those storms are much closer to that very favorable environment compared to the ones up in Davenport. So this is going to be the most prime environment. And y'all, I mean, it's way back here. Dare I say the MCS doesn't even matter? I mean, really. Dare I say the MCS doesn't even matter? If this environment was like back in here, I'd say heck yeah, it matters. But the main environment is north of Kansas City right now. And your MCS is back out over here, not even touching that. So we'll have to see how that progresses over the next 2 hours and see if that lifts further to the north. If we go to our newest HRRR, you can see that really doesn't pull that far off to the north. It really doesn't. It only goes a little bit further off to the north. And I am curious to see the HRRRs. This is the analysis on the HRRR, and look at that. So all this junk in here, that's what's fueling your MCS and your afternoon convection. But your slingshot shortwave is still back over towards Denver, Colorado right now. And over the next 6 hours, that's going to progress from Denver to probably Omaha over the next 6 hours. Let's go to the HRRR's future simulation of the 500 millibar. You can see it goes from Denver here at 10 a.m. Eastern. And then by the time we're at our peak severe threat at about 5 p.m., guess where it is? It's actually in freaking Des Moines and Omaha. So that is roughly 600 miles. That thing is moving at about 100 miles per hour. That thing is moving at about 100 miles per hour with that mid-level jet stream. That is a very fast-moving, forward-progressing slingshot trough there. Very, very fast-moving. So we're gonna have to. I'm very interested in this southern storm. That's gonna be what I really want to see, where it ends up at and how it survives over the next few hours. A PDS tornado watch will most definitely be needed later this afternoon. And if you are new to the channel and haven't watched much coverage this year, PDS tornado watches this year haven't really panned out very well. The two times we've had PDS tornado watches, one of them was a complete and utter bust, and the second one was almost a full bust, but we ended up with a strong tornado or two later on towards the end of the PDS's watch's lifespan. So this MCS is very, very good news for people further to the north. So we'll probably have an environment that can recover down in here later this afternoon. But as for like up in here, we're probably not going to be at as high of a risk for tornadoes north of Davenport as what we were originally thinking, since this MCS is so intense. So I think the main area for tornadoes today will be focused in here. I'm curious where StormNet has trended and where NATOcast has trended, because both of those were very, very far east. Yes, StormNet has shifted 50 miles south. StormNet has very little tornado threat north of Rockford. StormNet's main tornado threat today is focused in this region right here. So, Caleb, this is all shifted towards you, buddy. This is all shifted towards you, dude. You are probably going to be put into a PDS tornado watch. This entire threat has shifted from the main event being the Wisconsin-Illinois border to Chicago being in the main risk. Chicago, Joliet, Burlington, Peoria. Still don't know how to say your city name. Springfield, Jacksonville, Burlington in western Illinois, Davenport, Iowa, even northeast Missouri into Kirksville. That is where our main severe weather event has shifted to today. We were originally thinking, 2-3 days ago, it was going to be more of up here. But it shifted to, instead of that first white area, this second white area. So we'll need to watch this very closely. This is going to be what I watch the most, y'all, because I really want to see if this dies out or if this continues eastward. And we do have a good tornado warning here, good area of rotation for Lancaster in northeastern Missouri. So make sure you guys get to your safe spot in Lancaster, northeastern Missouri. That is a active tornado warning there. Will Wisconsin be under a tornado watch or severe watch? Good question. I'm leaning towards a severe watch. The thing is, there's going to be two accesses here for instability. You're going to have two accesses. Your main access right here, and then a secondary access right here. And depending how far north that secondary access goes, you may or may not be put under a tornado watch. I feel like the first few southern counties of Wisconsin will probably be in a tornado watch. So if you live in like Madison, Milwaukee, Madison, Janesville, Monroe, you guys are probably going to be put into a tornado watch. But if you live up towards like Reedsburg or Appleton, Wisconsin, that's probably going to be more of a severe watch. And I cannot stress enough this damaging wind threat here. 60% SIG 1 wind threat. That is a high-end wind threat. Matter of fact, that is so high-end that if we have higher confidence in a 90-mile-per-hour damaging wind event today, this would warrant a categorical risk upgrade to high. We are at a borderline 5 out of 5 high risk today for damaging winds alone. The tornado risk is at a moderate, but the wind risk, all that has to happen is a little bit more confidence in the risk for 90-mile-an-hour winds today, and boom, high risk. All they have to do is add a SIG 2 wind risk in place across this area, and we would be at a high risk today. So we are at a borderline high risk for severe weather. This is a upper end echelon moderate. again, monitoring this because I want to see if where this is going to be in the next hour, the next 2 hours here. If that places towards Burlington or if it dies out, that's going to be very crucial for our event. Right now, the HRRR just has it going to southeast Iowa and literally being a long-tracked supercell. Like, literally, the HRRR legit has this being a long-tracked supercell that literally tracks from southern Iowa all the way until it merges with an MCS in south of Chicago in, like, freaking 6 hours. So, I'm curious on what that ends up doing. But this could be one of our longest, if not our longest track supercell today. Do you know when the last time a high risk for wind was? It would have been... it has to have been out of this decade. I don't think we've had one this decade for damaging winds. Catman, you would be the most qualified person to answer that question, but I mean, I think we're looking at probably the early 2010s, like probably somewhere between you guys are saying 2012, 2014. So I think it's been like 10 plus years since we've had a high risk for damaging winds. I think the wind threat is going to perform like crazy. The only thing I'm questioning a bit is the Tor threat. The Tor threat is definitely going to be something that's dependent on multiple factors. Where the MCS is, where the MCS stops, how strong the MCS continues here in Davenport. Where's that secondary line towards Memphis at, and how long does that continue? Where does that set up? How far north does that propagate? So our tornado threat is a little bit more uncertain than our wind threat, but our wind threat is pretty much guaranteed to verify today. Not sure when the 12Z NATOcast comes out, but that will be something I look forward to very closely, because that will be another tool in the toolbox on how today's event could perform. See if NATOcast has also shifted south with its probabilities. CSU, which is basically an outlook made completely by models, that still has the highest tornado risk, even into northeastern Wisconsin. I find that borderline physically impossible. I find that almost impossible with the MCS today. I think that main tornado risk has shifted from up here to down here. However, something I can get behind is the wind risk. This is the wind risk from CSU, and that has a huge 45 plus sig wind risk across Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, and I think that is much more in line than the tornado risk from CSU. And again, that's just basically if you took a few model runs and made an outlook with it, that's pretty much what that does. No, I don't think it will be a PDS severe watch. I think it will be a PDS tornado watch with high-end severe probabilities. We could be looking at, today, the type of watch we could be looking at is like an 80, 80, 90, 90, and then 50, 50. That's the type of probs I would kind of expect. Is very high in Tor, 80, 80, 90, 90 for both your wind, or maybe 90, 70, 90, 80, right around there. And then the hail threat will definitely be the lowest probability. Hail shouldn't be that much of an issue today. We're just looking at some isolated hailstones that could approach 2.5, 3 inches in diameter. But those will be very, very isolated. Hail won't be that big of a problem, especially compared to the wind and the Tor threat. Also, speaking of wind, if you live out here in the East Coast, surprise, you're under a risk too. If you're watching from Washington, D.C., Allentown, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, New York City, you guys are in the risk for severe weather today as well. We have a 30% chance for damaging wind gusts of 60 miles per hour in that red area you see. And that is a very, very elevated probability for damaging winds for the eastern U.S. And surprise, you're under it for tomorrow as well. A big 30% for damaging winds tomorrow, in effect across much of that same area and even larger. So big time winds in the eastern U.S. to today, especially tomorrow. And then surprise, you're under it again for Sunday. Under it again. Sunday could be another day where we see a 30% wind risk outlined. So the eastern U.S. just getting slammed with damaging winds. I don't think we'll see much of a tornado threat. Sunday might have a chance for a tornado threat in the eastern U.S., but not much of a tornado threat today or tomorrow in the eastern U.S. Back over to our current tornado warning. We're still watching this tornado warning in Lancaster in northeastern Missouri. We're watching that closely. But it looks like our line here in Iowa is dying out. It still has a very good MCS shape, so it will still likely produce 50 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts as it pushes eastward. But the lightning is dying down. The velocities have virtually completely fallen apart. So we'll monitor that very closely to see how long that survives. Today for the Philadelphia area, definitely a windbag event. You guys are under some of the higher risks for damaging winds in the eastern U.S. today. But let me tell you, your wind event will not even come close to this. Your wind event will be just a small percentage of what the wind event today in Illinois and Missouri and southeast Iowa will be. We will probably see a full line of 60 to 90 mile an hour wind gusts across the whole state of Illinois today into eastern Missouri, and that will probably swipe through the entire state of Illinois. The only area that may not see 60 mile an hour winds today is like Harrisburg, far southern Illinois. But for the eastern U.S., we can't rule out some 60 mile an hour wind gusts. They're going to be mainly in the form of downbursts. So if you look at your model data, you'll be very misleaded, because your model data looks like this is nothing. But today's environment across the eastern U.S. is favorable for downbursts of damaging winds. And really, you know what? The SPC has the highest wind risk back towards Philadelphia. But I think the area with the highest wind risk today in the eastern U.S. is actually going to be more of central PA. I think more of Williamsport down towards Winchester, Virginia. That's probably where I would have the 30% wind risk today. I don't think Philadelphia is in the absolute highest risk for damaging winds today. And then tomorrow will be the same case where these storms look like absolute garbage, but they're actually going to be producing some downbursts of damaging winds. And I think the highest risk will be focused over, weirdly enough, in my neck of the woods. I think the highest risk will be focused in northern Virginia tomorrow, even though the SPC has it in eastern Pennsylvania. There's your wind risk for tomorrow. They do have it into northern Virginia, but I think that's going to be where our highest risk for damaging winds will be tomorrow, not necessarily up here. But if you are just tuning in, here is today's risk for severe weather. If you're just tuning in now, we've got a very high-end day for severe weather. This is a high-end moderate risk, level 4 out of 5, and a lot of people are under the gun. We're talking about almost 12 million people under this moderate risk for severe weather today in northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, and eastern Iowa. One of the more populated moderate risks for severe weather we've had over the last couple of days, in the last month or so. And that is centered right over very populated cities like Davenport, Iowa, Chicago, Illinois, Rockford, Illinois, just north of Lincoln, Illinois. Very populated, very, very populated areas under that moderate. Going for the tornado risk, we have a 15 sig 2. 15 sig 2 tornado risk that is in effect. Long story short, they've updated these risks so they're not as simple as they used to be, but they're more informative. If you're in this hatched area, you see this hatched area right here. That means if a tornado occurs, the maximum peak intensity it could get to is around an EF2 or a little greater. So that means EF2 to EF3 tornadoes are possible in that hatched area. Maximum EF3 max is EF3 tornadoes in that hatched area. And then down here in this secondary hatched area, that's where we're looking at the opportunity for multiple EF2 to EF3 tornadoes, and we can't rule out an EF4 tornado in that secondary hatched area centered over Burlington, Iowa, Davenport, Iowa, and even just west of Chicago, Illinois. And then we do have a damaging wind risk today. Very, very high damaging wind risk. A 60% chance. A 60% chance every 25 miles of a given point for damaging winds greater than or equal to 60 miles per hour out here in that purple hatched area. Speaking of the hatched area means damaging winds greater than 74 miles per hour is likely today. So we could see damaging winds upwards of even 90 miles per hour in this area. And we could be talking about damaging winds upwards of 100. And if the SPC has enough confidence in the damaging wind potential upwards of 100, there is a slim chance we could get an upgrade to a high risk 5 out of 5 today. The hail risk is the least of y'all's concern out here. If you're in that 15% hatched area, that's where we're looking at every 25 miles of a given point, you're looking at about a 15% chance of 1-inch hail or greater. And that black hatched area is hailstones potentially upwards of 2.5 inches in diameter. So the hail risk is the least of your concern today, but still a concern for severe weather. But that tornado risk, I'm very skeptical on at the moment with how our MCS looks. I don't agree with a high risk for tornadoes, nah. If we get a high risk, I am like 99% sure it would be for wind alone. Very confident. Very confident in that. If we get a high risk, it would be for wind. And finally, the HRRR is at least a little bit accurate. I've been telling one of my friends who is storm chasing today to not use the HRRR because the HRRR had the highest severe threat up in here. If you all remember from yesterday, if we go back to those runs here, you could see the HRRR was really painting the highest tornado threat right in this area. And I knew it wouldn't be that far north. I knew it wouldn't be all the way up to Appleton. If you look at the environment here, you could see the peak environment is north of Madison towards Watertown, Wisconsin. And now look at the HRRR. Where's the peak environment now? Oh, way down here over Caleb's house. Right in here is your peak environment. So that's how far south the HRRR has shifted in the last 12 hours, or the last 24 hours. It shifted from north of Madison with the peak environment down to Burlington. That's almost 150, if not more than 150 mile per hour, or 150 mile shift. That thing shifted about 150 miles with the peak environment, which is exactly what I was thinking. I knew the HRRR wasn't the best model to choose yesterday, which is why we used more of the RFSA. New MCD, let's see. Okay, this is not our main MCD of the day. By any means, not the main MCD. Damaging winds remain likely over eastern Iowa into northwestern Illinois. 60 to 70 mile an hour wind gust, 1 to 1.5 inch hail, and maybe a tornado or two, maybe even one strong will be possible. An MCS with a history of producing measured severe wind gusts will continue quickly to move across eastern Iowa. Two main surges are evident with this northern and southern line, with the southeastern portion in southeast Iowa currently producing damaging winds. Meanwhile, the trailing portion of the MCS extends southward into northern Missouri, where backbuilding is occurring. It appears the environment further east into Illinois and southern Wisconsin will undergo significant destabilization for this existing MCS to remain severe this afternoon. 12Z soundings over Davenport, and I believe that would be somewhere across north central Illinois. ILX shows a stabilized air mass from the overnight MCS. So that's actually going to be Davenport. I think DVN is actually Des Moines and Davenport soundings there. So stabilized environment from the MCS. However, visible satellite shows strong heating is occurring ahead of the MCS and will allow for moisture to gradually return northward across Illinois and the vicinity. Some tornado risk could also occur. The air mass should become more favorable later in the day as the air mass becomes more volatile. So, here's the thing. Are they thinking that's going to become the main wind threat today? Are they thinking like that's going to become the main wind threat today? And our main torr threat will come from the southern side cold front? So like that cold front pushes more north, but then, nah, this isn't going to be the main wind threat. I don't see a way how that happens. I do think this will pose a good wind threat, but not the main wind threat today. And they have it moving southeast, which is not true. I hate to rain on your parade, Storm Prediction Center, but this sucker is not moving southeast. This is about as clear as a northeast moving MCS as you can get. I hate to rain on their parade there, but I disagree with the southeastern motion. This is moving more east, right in here. But this northern portion, so if I just draw this out, this is moving more east. But this stuff looks to be moving more east to northeast. I don't see that stuff going down towards like Springfield. If we look at the MCD, I think Springfield is almost included in that MCD. Which, by the way, in this case, the SPC for this mesoscale discussion is just saying damaging winds will continue with an isolated tornado and hail threat. A new severe watch will likely be needed into central and northern Illinois to cover that risk. And I want to go to the alerts. And yeah, that MCS does cover Springfield. I don't think Springfield will be under the good risk for damaging winds until later in the day, probably closer to 6 o'clock, near 6 o'clock local. Thank you, your local villain, for the $5 donation. Appreciate it. It's really appreciated. Thank you for being a calm presence and not being fear-mongering. I get severe. A little misspelling, I think, right there. Anxiety for tornadoes, and I appreciate you and all you do. From Madison, Wisconsin. I appreciate that and the kind words. Thank you for the $5 donation. And I try not to fearmonger, but sometimes on these higher end days, I will admit, maybe I do go a little bit over the top. But I try my best not to go too crazy with wording. But, you know, the last few days, we've been talking about this potential being way higher than the SPC was making it seem for, like, the last literally 2 to 3 days. About 3 days ago, we started discussing a high-end, moderate to high risk being possible. And thankfully, you guys in chat, for some reason, you guys weren't calling me crazy. And then here we are by day 1, and we literally are so close to a high risk. We're very close. Like I said, all they have to do is upgrade and have a little bit more confidence in 90-mile-an-hour winds, and then we'd have a high risk. But Madison, Wisconsin, I mean, you're right on that edge of the 45 and the 30% wind risk. So the main wind risk will stay to your south where that 60% contour is. But you're right on that edge of that main opportunity for damaging winds today. Thankfully, that moderate just a little to your south. But you are in that main, you know, that main level 3 out of 5 enhanced. But the primary moderate is to your south. I agree there's many fail modes for the tornado threat, but I disagree for the wind threat. I highly disagree for the wind threat. I think the wind threat is almost a given for an insane wind threat today. Probably a derecho tracking from eastern Iowa to southwestern or western Ohio. But I completely agree with the fail modes for the tornado threat. There's definitely plenty of fail modes for the tor threat. It could be something as little as the MCS forming too quickly. And boom, there goes your primary risk for intense tornadoes today. But I think the wind risk is locked in as a very high-end threat. HREF has a high risk today. My HREF hasn't loaded in, so you must have got a quick sneak peek at it before it fully came in. The 12Z's rendering right now. Let's go back to our current radar. We don't have a tornado warning anymore. Our strongest storm right now by far is this storm in Kirksville in northeastern Missouri, exactly where we had a large tornado in this radar hole last night. We covered that about 30-40 minutes before we ended our coverage yesterday with that large tornado in a radar hole. Taking a look at your environment, the reason why this storm has more uncertainty is because it's closer to that more favorable environment. So this thing could survive a little bit longer than the MCS back up in here. But you'll notice this is our prime environment. So this is the environment that's going to be causing the issues. This right here is going to be what causes the issues for your wind and tor threat in western Illinois, southeastern Iowa, and northeastern Missouri. This is a little portion of our convection that's hanging on in Kirksville, and that could propagate eastward and continue as a 60 to 70 mile an hour wind threat. And if we go back to our observations, you could see the instability out in front, not very high. It really is not recovering much at all, but as daytime obviously becomes more prominent, the sun gets higher up into the sky, we could get a little bit better heating there, and we could recover for that MCS to stay a little bit more intense than some of these models show. So we are going to be getting a, here's your new HRRR right now. And you can see that still keeps your MCS ongoing, but look at the main thing here. Is this not an uptrend? This is a considerable up, oh my word. This is a huge uptrend on the new HRRR with instability. Look at the difference. Look at the difference between the two. Huge uptrend on the newest model run. Way further north. But you can see how the overall area is a little bit messy. That definitely could kill today's tornado threat, which is why, again, I'm definitely not talking about a high risk for tornadoes today. I think there's even a chance the 15 Sig 2 doesn't perform. However, I 100% agree with the Storm Prediction Center going 15 Sig 2 today, because look at that environment. All it takes is a single supercell out in front of that stuff, out in front of the messier storm mode. We could easily get a huge tornado threat. Easily could get 1 or 2 violent tornadoes today, if, that's a big if, supercells can fire in front of that messier mode. If they don't fire in front of that messier mode, we'll stick with more of that strong to intense tornado threat. The only way we really get a violent tornado threat today is if one of those supercells can get in front of the messier mode. Thank you, MIW2121, for the $5 donation. Just want to thank you for your live stream. It's nice to see meteorologists making streams on here to have us covered. I will say I'm not a degreed meteorologist. I'll point that out right now, but I am, I've studied college textbooks, but I haven't actually gone to get a degree for meteorology. However, if you look up the definition of meteorologist, it's one who studies weather. So I could technically call myself a meteorologist, but I'm not a degreed meteorologist. But I'm very, very well very well informed with weather. Like I said, I've studied multiple college textbooks, which is why I'm pretty good at forecasting, because I do know my stuff. Even though I don't have a degree, I still do know my stuff. But every meteorologist with a degree is going to know more than me for weather. I do see people posting that. How do they have that early? That's where one of you guys saw it. The HREF people are posting it, even though I don't. It's not done rendering, but for some people apparently it is, and it has a high risk in northeastern Illinois for tornadoes. Which, like I said, I don't see that actually coming anywhere close to verifying. I highly doubt that's going to be able to verify. So once more, if you're just tuning in, you're wondering what we're watching here, what we're dealing with today. We've got a line that is maintaining 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts here for damaging winds into northern Illinois. This is a line that formed overnight and produced 60 to 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts across central Illinois earlier this morning around 8 to 9 a.m. We're also watching another storm that is formed in Kirksville. This storm is in a little bit more favorable of an environment, so we're thinking this one might be able to sustain a little bit longer than our MCS back up here going towards Chicago. After this stuff gets out of here, over the next few hours or so, right about 3-4 p.m., we're assuming this MCS is going to be into northeastern Illinois, and if that southern line does survive, it would be towards central Illinois. If that storm does survive, that's a big if. Behind it, we'll have a destabilizing environment that will be even more favorable for significant damaging winds and even strong to intense long track tornadoes. And you can kind of see this here. This is your environment right now. We have about 500 instability in front of our MCS, which is why it's struggling to intensify, but it is maintaining because it does have some instability. So it's maintaining 60-mile-an-hour winds. That storm around Kirksville, that has a more favorable environment of about 1,000 to 1,500 Cape. And that's why that one is producing closer to 70-mile-an-hour winds and even had a tornado warning a little bit ago. Our most prime environment, though, is to the west of that, and that's the environment currently north of Kansas City that in about 4 hours or so will be progressed into southeastern Iowa, northeastern Missouri, and west central Illinois, and that's going to be the environment capable of producing a couple strong to intense long-track tornadoes. If we go to our model run, you can see this environment. This is our newest model run, which I will say is one of the more aggressive runs that we have seen today. And you'll see here that this environment continues to pull northward, continues to destabilize and overspread Illinois. You could see our MCS right in there around the Chicago area. This model does not have that storm in Kirksville in central Illinois. So that's a big wild card right there. That's a big wild card. But you can see how that environment north of Kansas City progresses eastward, and that becomes our volatile environment in this area. But that storm is a huge, huge wild card here. The model one I just showed you for instability, it's simulated reflectivity. It has that storm going off to the north, and it's not as far south as what it actively is. So the HRRR thinks that storm is right in here, whereas if we go to your current radar, oh, well, you know, it's not too bad. But you could see it does definitely look a little bit different. It thinks it's right here, and it's actually right here. So it's a little bit bigger. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. I will give the HRRR props on that. It's not terrible. I want to see our RRFSA model run, which has been one of my more favorite model runs recently. And we could discard that because it has our MCS too far north. And it doesn't have any convection over Missouri right now, which is not true. So unfortunately, we'll have to discard that. Why is hurricane season so quiet? I already put out my hurricane season forecast. You could go watch that. That's a very in-depth forecast. Long story short, we have a strong El Nino that's going to create more wind shear across the basin, and thus a more inactive hurricane season. Let's see. So this is the rest of that HRRR run. This would, I mean, this would promote a lesser wind threat, but unfortunately, this would promote the risk for, like I said, probably 1 or 2 long-tracked, intense to violent tornadoes. I don't think that will happen. I don't think that will happen, but that is definitely the ceiling for today's tornado threat. You get multiple prefrontal storms. Here's your front. Your front's back here. And you get like 4 or 5 supercells in central Illinois that are prefrontals that get ahead of that. And I don't think that will happen. The HRRR is notorious for this. It did it with yesterday's risk. Yesterday's risk, it had multiple supercells. If I can go back to it, maybe I can show y'all. Maybe it wasn't yesterday, but one of these... Oh, no, maybe it was. There you go. It had supercells firing in front of a line yesterday. Like, early this morning, last night. And those posing a strong to intense tornado threat. And that never happened, obviously. So the HRRR sometimes does this. So that's why I'm not sold on it. I do think we'll have the chance for a supercell or 2 to get in front of the front. And those could pose a very intense to violent tornado threat. And that's why we have our 15% SIG-2 tornado risk today from the SPC. But I also think our line is going to be stronger than what this shows. I think the 13ZH RRR is more realistic with a line of damaging winds and the risk for a prefrontal storm or 2 in front. The 14ZH RRR I feel like is overdoing the supercells and underdoing the line. We can go to your 12Z NAM, which shows the big line, and it's really consistent throughout all of our models on this big line. So I really disagree with that newest HRRR. So we can go to mesoanalysis and can kind of compare the two. This is your newest mesoanalysis. You can see our MCS is heading into this very unfavorable environment, but the Cape is starting to recover in northern Illinois with time. And so this line might survive a little bit longer than models show, although I don't think it will be significant. I just think it will be 50 to 60 mile-an-hour wind gusts. Maybe a gust could approach upwards of 70 if it does re-intensify. You can see the tail end of that line here in northeastern Missouri, and it is in a better environment, which is why that is a wild card. It's kind of 50-50 on if it survives. If it survives, that could definitely decrease the overall risk for tornadoes later today, if that helps to keep your warm sector further south than anticipated or not. So we'll need to watch that very closely over the next 2 hours in terms of how today could perform. And then obviously we have our main destabilizing environment right in here. That's going to go towards Iowa and western Illinois. Regardless, we're going to have a big day for severe weather. It's just how big. How big of a day for severe weather are we going to have? And that depends on this morning convection. And look at that. It's actually sub-severe now. So it's not even producing 60 mile-an-hour wind gusts anymore on much of your MCS. We have 1 severe warning left on that primary MCS right now. And then on the tail end of that, we still do have our more severe storm in northeastern Missouri. Yeah, we already do have a lot of supercell composite, but Critty, you said maxed out supercell composite. I've seen supercell composite go near 60 before, so. But a favorable environment for supercell composite on this is a very favorable. It's typically 8 or greater From what I understand, 8 or greater supercell composite is very favorable. And this is at 12 to 20 across this area. I think a high risk is coming at 1230. Nah. No, I don't. In order for us to get a high risk, what would have to happen is this MCS would have to just completely vanish here in the next hour. And we'd have to see a very clear sign that this is propagating far northward. Which I don't expect it to go too far north. I really don't think our main warm sector will get past, Davenport and Chicago. I really don't think we'll see that main warm sector go into southern Wisconsin. So looking at that SPC outlook again today, for those just joining, here it is. We're at a level 4 out of 5, moderate risk for severe weather today. This is a moderate risk for tornadoes and winds. If we do get a high risk, it's going to be only for wind, because I don't see a high risk for tor being needed at all. But it wouldn't surprise me if they go high for wind, to be honest, with the setup that we have and the model runs that we've seen today. The overall probabilities, there's your tornado risk, greatest tornado risk in that 15 double hatched area. And there's your wind risk, highest wind risk in that very high probability, 60% wind risk. I think today will be a PDS tornado watch with very high end severe watch probabilities. That's what I'm thinking. From Chicago, what can I expect? It's a little tricky on exactly what may occur in Chicago, but we're generally thinking the risk for a brief tornado or two, maybe one strong. That highest tornado risk is focused to your west. Some isolated large hail embedded in a line upwards of maybe an inch and a half inch hail there in Chicago. I think the hail threat will be primarily worse to your west southwest. I really think the worst hail risk will be out in this vicinity here. So I think you are removed from the main tornado risk and the main hail risk. However, you are smack dab dead center of that primary 60% wind risk for today. So I do think you will be at a very high opportunity for 60 to 70 mile an hour wind gusts. We'll have to see. It's hard to say exactly how intense and how large our line is going to be, but I do think you will be at risk for 60 to 70 mile an hour winds at least. And some of the higher end models for today actually shows wind gusts upwards of 80 to 85 miles per hour around the Chicago area. So a whole lot of wind, the risk for some low end large hail, and then a brief tornado or two, maybe one strong. So very high-end hazards, and that's for around the Chicago area. Those hazards could be in downtown Chicago. They could be to the south of Chicago, to the north of Chicago. But generally right around that Chicago area is where we're thinking a tornado or two, one strong, 60 to 70 mile an hour winds, maybe even gusts upwards of 80, and then 1 to 1.5 inch hail. Hopefully that stays to the south of the downtown area. Officially in an El Nino according to the CPC. Wouldn't surprise me. Surprised they didn't say it earlier. Let's go and take a look at satellite. That's something I haven't looked at. That is probably the most crucial portion of nowcasting. You can see all the spotter dots, and that's not a great look if you're hoping for a widespread severe weather event or tornado event. That's definitely not the look that you want from a chasing perspective. A very thick cloud cover over your rapidly destabilizing environment, even behind the MCS. So that's not a really good look there. And what that could do is that could keep lapse rates low. And what lapse rates are is that's the change of temperatures with height. Typically, on high-end days like today, you're going to want to see a lot of cooling with that environment. So if we just take a sounding out here, let's just go, I don't know, north central Missouri, right? Here's a sounding in north central Missouri, and these are pretty good mid-level lapse rates. You see that? That is a lot of change with height right in here. That's actually pretty good. You get a lot of change with height right there, and that's also an EML evident, which should keep crapvection over convection from being an issue, at least for a little bit. That could be an issue once that EML breaks later today in southeastern Iowa. But the biggest thing here is those lower levels, there's not a significant amount of changing with temperatures with height there. This is actually not the worst example because this is pretty good. This is actually pretty good lapse rates. Not that bad. That's not really a very bad environment for lapse rates. Let's go a little bit further in the future here. We're going to take one not on this because this is the unrealistic high-end scenario of today. Let's take one on the simulated reflectivity out here in southeastern Iowa and see if that's worse. That's honestly still not too bad, to be honest with you. You still get good change with height. It's really not that bad on the HRRR. Not as bad as I was thinking. With all the cloud cover we have in the morning MCS, I was really expecting worse. Let's see down in here. That's actually very good. That is actually shockingly good lapse rates. That is perfect lapse rates right there. Beautiful, beautiful change with height with those temperatures. That's actually, like, that's a very, very good SKU-T profile there. Maybe a little stable air trapped at the surface, though. You could see how those dew points shoot to the right. So I wonder if there's some stable air trapped there, just above the surface. On the surface, it looks like those temperatures cool and the dew points increase, which is really good. But, like, right above that, that looks a little worse. A little stable air trapped. That could be why the HRRR doesn't have very mature supercells firing along the cold front and instead well in front of the cold front. We are getting a new ORFSA in. And it's just not handling that southern storm well. It's just not. And not handling that southern storm well whatsoever. If today underperforms, it's going to be because of this guy. It's going to be because of this guy trying to stop the warm sector from lifting north. That's what it's going to be. Yeah, the MCS is dying off. That's what we were really expecting, but this is still a very, very strong supercell out here in Kirksville. It did get downgraded to 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, but it's still a very prominent supercell with a lot of lightning, a lot of DBZ, high DBZ, which means that it's a lot of heavy rain and maybe some hail in that. So we're going to have to watch that very, very, very closely. Again, if today does underperform, that's going to be a reason. Won't necessarily be the MCS, but more of that. Let's see. Yeah, even Storm Chaser just tweeted that there's a big wild card with the southern convection. And here's the thing, sometimes you could get destabilization that just passes that convection. So, we'll wait and see. I mean, you could see right now, it looks like that main destabilization stops right near that MCS. That tiny storm. Not necessarily an MCS, more of a supercell, like I said just a bit ago. And you could see the clearing behind it, but it's not a lot of clearing. It's just some clearing directly behind that cloud cover. Weather Warrior, thank you for the $5 donation. I see both lines of storms weakening on a weakening trend. I'm watching it firsthand. Clearing is ensuing, already 80 degrees and muggy under cloud cover. And that cloud cover actually could help today's temperatures not rise too high to the point where we end up with elevated storms, which is where the base of supercells end up firing higher up in the atmosphere to the point where it takes more spin and more effort for a storm to produce a tornado. This thing's bugged with flash flood warnings, by the way. See if it pops up again. Thing's bugged with flash flood warnings because it keeps saying flash flood warning's been issued. We only have 2 flash flood warnings right now. We'll have to see if it turns. If it turns more north-northeast, that would be good for the environment, as in the environment would destabilize more. But if it like deattaches from the MCS up here and starts moving to the southeast, which is kind of what it's looking like it's trying to do, that would help wipe out more of the warm sector. So that's a big wild card. A lot of things could change with that. It could continue east and strengthen and wipe out the warm sector. It could die out right now, and that would promote the warm sector to lift further to the north, more like what the models were showing. It could push to the east and not really die out that much, which would be kind of like as expected forecast. Hold on a second. Sorry, I've been distracted. Where is that on? Let's go to models here. Oh, yeah, this. This is the probability of a tornado within a 4-hour time frame. This is what we're at right now. And I can already tell you this is dead wrong. The best risk for a tornado right now is with that dying MCS and the supercell down to the south right in here. I don't know why this has anything to the west highlighted. And that best risk with the dying MCS and the supercell, that risk is not high whatsoever. It's just definitely higher than out towards Des Moines. And then 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m. There you go, 4 or 5 p.m. Your main warm sector. I do think this is a little bit off to the north. This is definitely a more northern scenario here. 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and it does have a high risk. Or actually, no, this is not necessarily a high risk. This is a percentage. Well, yeah, in that case it is. Never mind. I thought the percent would be lower. That is indeed a high risk on this, which is the HREF. Okay, buddy. Okay. Okay, buddy. Sure. Sure. Like, I believe that. I think if that all was shifted to the south, if this whole thing was shifted like 30 miles to the south, I could agree with it a bit more, but definitely no 60%. The square of death. Why it look like a backwards Oklahoma? Get the panhandle over here, and then you basically just have an Oklahoma shape. Yeah, I don't know. That's not gonna happen. This thing's obviously overdoing it. Probability of severe wind, which it has a 60% today, which is to be expected. What about hail? It does have a 30% hail risk as well. This is your probability of an updraft. Probability of a notable updraft right here. And you can see it has high probability of a good supercell type updraft right in this area. Your probability of any updraft, which would be literally like a thunderstorm. It could be a heavy rain shower, weak thunderstorm. And that stretches all the way from Milwaukee, Wisconsin down to Lubbock, Texas. And that's just generally like your probability of a thunderstorm, not a supercell. Your probability of a good thunderstorm, a really good thunderstorm, would be with this as your updraft track. And then a very intense thunderstorm, you could see really the only probability of that that's decent is in northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin. Not sure why that's so far north. Don't know why that's so far north. Here is the mean average of your surface-based instability, and you can see two very clear access points here. One of that environment in southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, and then your primary environment back in central Illinois. There's your lightning probability, by the way. I'm surprised that lightning probability isn't a little higher with your MCS. And then here's your mean composite reflectivity, which shows your just really a broken line of convection at first towards 4 p.m. And then your main line as you get towards 6 p.m. till about 11. Let's go back to, this is your RRFSA model run, which, like I said, not handling that southern storm well, so it's borderline useless. Pretty much no model that we have showed that southern storm. Well, here's one. This is the NSSL RN, which we used a couple days ago. And this is yesterday's run for today, which actually looks pretty dang good. It actually looks pretty good. If we go to the radar, from what we're actively seeing, here's the MCS. And we'll go back to that model and see what it had. It does not look that far off. It really doesn't. That's not that bad. It definitely didn't get the northern side right that much, but it really did very, very well on portraying that morning MCS. If we just push that off further, what does it have? Well, it has some supercells forming at about 3 p.m. in front of your cold front. And then those congeal up into a line at about 7 p.m. And then that becomes your primary damaging wind threat up until about 10 or 11, where it starts to weaken quite quickly. Let's go to your surface-based cape. It definitely is overdoing instability in Illinois right now. If we take a look here, this says there's 3,000 cape. We go to mesoanalysis. There's actually about 1,500, so. Apparently in 2 hours, that's supposed to destabilize. In the next hour and a half, it's supposed to go from 1,000 cape to 4,000, 4,500. I have a sneaking suspicion it won't destabilize that fast. Be some record time. Might have to, like, that'd be crazy. That would be absolutely crazy. I mean, it does have probably the most clearing right now. It probably has the most clearing that we have actively. The red dots are all your chasers, by the way. Look at them all. All right in this vicinity here. You can see the bulk of them are right around the Davenport, Cedar Rapids area, which is probably where the best chance for severe weather to start at will be. later today. I don't know, y'all. This line down here, not weakening very quickly. It is falling apart, but not as fast as what it may have been modeled. We'll have to see. It does look like it's falling apart pretty well, to be honest with you. So we'll keep on watching that. I want to wait for the HREF on the actual site, but it's not coming in for me. It's stuck at not even rendering. And that's what has a high risk, apparently, today. But yeah, if you guys haven't already, there's not much happening other than just 2 severe warnings on this one storm. So take the time to hit that like button. Share the stream with your family, friends, social media. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, consider hitting that subscribe button with a notification bell set to all so you know when I go live later today if we decide to end. If we decide to end and then come back, or if we just stay here the entire time. So consider doing that. Hitting that like button, subscribing, and sharing. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. So we'll keep watching this storm here. Again, that's just going to play a big, big key, a big factor in how today's event performs. What's weird is it's just not moving northeast. A lot of models and also StormNet shows it moving northeast, and instead it's just moving more of due east. Let me go to... Do we have NATO cast yet? I just remembered that should be in soon. Oh, yep, we do. 11 minutes ago. Let's see. So here is... Oh, Lord have mercy. Here's NATO cast for wind today. And for some reason, for some reason the last 2-3 days, it's had a bias in this area. And for all of the days, it hasn't performed. None of the days have performed where it's had these very high probabilities out in that area. But you can see it has a 45 and 60 sig wind back in Illinois. But this stuff, it's never verified. We've had, NATOcast has had this stuff for like 2 or 3 days out here in the eastern U.S., and it has it again today, and it has it again tomorrow, and none of the days it is verified out there. So there's your NATOcast for wind today. Let's go to Tor. I didn't see it yet. This is for tomorrow's Tor risk. Tiny little 3% in southeast Colorado. Today, interesting choice. Now, this is the 2022 models, which typically underdo it. It underdid it yesterday. This had a 5% Tor yesterday. Yesterday performed as borderline, in my opinion, a 15, probably Sig 1 tornado risk. And I don't know if we have the second. Oh, we do. There you go. That's the one that performed well yesterday. And that has a 15 Sig today. And we don't have the 14Z in just yet. So, yeah, that's generally what NATOcast has. And again, this performed very well. And actually, it overperformed yesterday. Some days it underperforms, some days it overperforms. But I still think that that primary 15% tornado risk is a little too far north. Shifted about 15, 20 miles south, and I would probably agree a bit more. I'm just not convinced our warm sector is going to get that far north when we still have morning convection pushing that far south. I mean, you're getting some rain showers now outside of the tornado watch in Macon, Missouri. And then by no means is it very organized behind this either. You've got a lot of morning convection back there too. So this is definitely not a definitive forecast. There's definitely a lot that could and probably is going wrong right now in order for this to perform the tour and the wind threat. TRG is really back and forth. The models are showing it being crazy, but the surface analysis is kind of telling me different. Because this is absolutely demolishing your warm sector. And at least there's not a whole lot of warm sector out there, but the biggest thing it's doing is stalling the destabilization to the south. It's preventing this from pushing north. And like no model had that, even if we go to the HRRR, which we're about to get a new one. You could see by this time, this isn't too far off. Not too far off, so I will say the HRRR a little bit more accurate there. But it's just very, very stalled to the south-southwest. And you can see this, the primary tornado threat definitely does not get into south central Wisconsin on this run. Which is why I'm skeptical of the 15 sig tour being into far northeastern Illinois and the 60% tour on HREF getting into southern Wisconsin. Thank you for the $2 donation. When do you think Bloomington, Indiana may see something? Bloomington is just southwest of Indianapolis. It's going to be tricky. I could tell you this. No matter what, the line is going to be weakening as it gets to you. It's just we don't know how weak it's going to be once it gets to you. So I would say expect about 60 mile an hour wind gusts, half-inch hail, and I wouldn't fully rule out the chance for a tornado right around 11 p.m. tonight. You're not in that main risk area today. You're in the slight risk for severe weather in that yellow. So you're not in the primary level 3 or level 4 enhanced and moderate out of 5 there. So I would watch in that area if you're around Indianapolis, around Bloomington. 60 mile an hour wind gust, half-inch hail, and a brief spin-up tornado, all possible around 11 o'clock. Right around that time frame of 11 later today. But yeah, I don't expect much to happen here till about 3 p.m. now. I don't expect much notable severe weather to happen till about 3 p.m. This has definitely lost a good amount of strength here. But the thing is, it's still present. So it's still going to be trying to stall that warm front. Or the overall warm sector. Typo in the title. Let me go fix that. Sweet. Love it. There we go. Perfect. So we'll continue to watch this here. Again, it does look, that newest scan still looking a bit weaker, but the lightning activity is still very high with it, so that's your wild card. Either way, today's going to be a big day for damaging winds, tornado potential, and large hail. It's just talking about the sense of actually hitting that high-end ceiling that we have today with that moderate risk for severe weather. Obviously, today could perform as a high risk for damaging winds, but in terms of the moderate for torr and moderate for wind, being realistic, that's what I'm trying to figure out here. And it's never a good look, no matter which way you put it, it's never a good look for a severe weather day when you have a morning MCS going into the afternoon. It's almost noon now. It's almost 12 p.m. here on the East Coast. Almost dead center of your moderate risk. No matter how you put it, that is definitely going to create some insane uncertainty and a very high probability of an underperformance. Yeah, I do think a high risk is possible, but I don't think the SPC will actually go for it based on the observations that we see. And it would definitely be a high risk for wind, not for torr. Let's go back to your HRRR run again. This is the only model run that is even semi-accurate. It's barely even semi-accurate. And that has a very big day for severe weather ahead. Let me go to... Okay. Sorry, I wanted to check something on this end. So back to your HRRR. Again, that has a pretty high-end day for severe weather. Not necessarily for the damaging wind side of things, to be honest with you. Because what happens here is these prefrontal storms take up the environment in front of the main line of damaging winds. And so that leaves a cool pool for the line. So the line never gets going on this particular run until maybe after it merges with those supercells at 11 p.m. And by then you're already losing your daylight and it's already well past peak instability. So everything just kind of fizzles out. But that's definitely not a very accurate model run for reflectivity. Because of how it doesn't involve, and it doesn't really pick up that tail end convection in northeastern Missouri. March 14th, 2024, I had a huge MCS go through Ohio. Then like multiple violent tornadoes. Are you talking about last year? 2025? I can't remember a March 14th, 2024 event. But yeah, an MCS doesn't necessarily mean it's going to bust. It just creates a whole lot more uncertainty and a lot more you got to be a lot more cautious with your forecast. Because imagine if that MCS wasn't here, you know? If this MCS wasn't here this morning, we would probably already be at a high risk. But since it is, we're debating even a verification of a moderate. We'll just have to wait how it destabilizes. It's hard to say exactly what's going to happen until we figure out how much it destabilizes, and we won't know that for another 3 hours. And this look is pretty sloppy. Again, you've got morning convection still behind your MCS, and you don't have a lot of clearing behind that either. So we get a new SPC outlook here in 40 minutes. We'll wait to see what that has. I have a very high feeling they're just going to keep it moderate. I don't think there's really a reason to push it to high risk today. Like I said, if that MCS wasn't there, yeah. But the MCS itself was pretty significant if we go to your storm reports. I mean, we didn't get a whole lot of reports, but we did have quite a few severes for 60 to 70 mile an hour winds, and then I think we had either 2 or 3 severes for 80 mile an hour winds. But that definitely doesn't show a very significant picture for this morning's MCS. If you look at it on the loop, it looks a little bit more significant. You see, it started way back here. Look at all the hail reports and wind reports in southern southeastern Nebraska between 3 and 5 a.m. And pushes eastward, congeals up into a line. 80 mile an hour wind report right there, 2 of them. 80 mile an hour wind reports earlier, very early this morning. That actually classifies as yesterday, as you can see right there. Apparently 2 tornadoes too. Radar debris signature noted at 6:16 a.m. Pushes eastward, congeals up into a line, and crap. 90? I ain't heard none of this stuff. I didn't hear anything about this stuff, so this was a very significant MCS very early this morning. Pushes eastward into Des Moines. And then that's where we had one of the, I remember waking up early this morning just to check it, and I remember we had an 80 mile an hour severe in that area for that Boeing segment. And then continued to push eastward, and we got another 80 mile an hour severe for Davenport, or around Davenport. I think it was west of Davenport out here. And that's when we went live. And here we are now. MCS definitely breaking up, but you still got a good amount of convection here heading to the east into that warm sector. I just got a new severe thunderstorm warning down here. I don't know what that was for. It's not actually new. I think it was just a disk extension, but it looks like it was new. Looks very strange. What was that warning beforehand? Let me see. Oh, okay. That was actually the considerable severe. That used to be like this large. And now it's just that tiny little quadrant right there. It used to be a huge severe. For a second, I thought it was for like this thing right here, but it's not. So we still have 2 severe warnings, which this one just got canceled, so that's actually down to 1 severe warning now. And that's for this one in Knox City and Williamston. So we'll keep watching that very closely out there for Williamston, just to see if it does die out or not. But yeah, again, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button with the notification bell set to all. It really supports the channel. And like I said, hit that notification and that notification bell, set it to all, so you know when I go live later today. Because I don't think we're going to stay live this entire time into the main event, but you never know. We're at least going to stay live to see this new HRRR run and to see the new SPC outlook. Here's the new run, which again, fully fails to recognize the placement of that severe storm in northeastern Missouri. We can draw it out, draw out the MCS here. We'll draw out this whole entire batch of stuff, of rain. We aren't getting the new HRRR just yet on this site, so we'll wait for that. We'll keep that drawing there. Yeah, this run really has the stuff pushing, a lot more cape pushing north here over the next hour. But I really feel like that's going to depend greatly on whatever this does and where that's positioned. So this was the 14Z HRRR. You can at least see the 15Z did shift it at least a little south. A little bit to the south-southeast. But not by much. If any. I have a tornado warning? No, we don't. Where? Did the overlay say that? I don't think we did. I don't know where we would have a tornado warning at. I wonder if this thing's going to pop up with another flash flood warning. It did? Did the overlay popped up with a warning? It did for a split second. I wonder why. Because it didn't come in. You didn't hear any beeps. If there was a tornado warning, it would have had all these things would have been going off. You would have saw the beep at the bottom middle, and then I would have had a beep on weatherwise, and I would have also seen it on here as well. Would have had like 3-4 different visual and audible cues for it. Because I have everything open right now. See if it goes back up to 1. Look at the kind of the top left to the right of the SPC site. See if it goes back up to 1 tornado warning. It does it for only a second. Nope, there you go. And then it just tweaked up to 5 severes. Like, what? It'd be overcounting things. It's trying to predict what's going to happen later today. There you go. And they're back down to what it actually is. Excuse me. There's a considerable in Kansas. There's not actually. That's glitching. That thing's tweaking. Oh yeah, sure. Another flood alert. Yeah, this thing be tweaking today, y'all. They're leaking the script. Yesterday it was doing that quite a bit as well. Let me go see what this chaser said. Hold on. One of the chasers I follow just tweeted about today. No more severe warnings, so... No more severe thunderstorm warnings. So if that overlay says there's severes or tornado warnings, it's lying. We're down to 0 tours, 0 severes, and we do have 1 flash flood warning. So I wonder if it's going to beep again and be like, flash flood warnings issued. Because we do have 1 flood alert. It is starting to move more northeast. But you just have so much convection around it, too. It is starting to finally get out of here. Yeah, the HRRR goes crazy about 2 p.m. Nope, yep. I knew that was going to happen. And apparently we're back to 1 tornado warning, 5 severes, and 11 floods, but that's not true. And the thing's tweaking from yesterday. We had so many alerts yesterday, it broke it. So many alerts yesterday, it broke the overlay. Yesterday was such a big day, it's still trying to catch up. I mean, we did. Yesterday was probably one of the biggest outbreak days we've had in like probably since almost March, I feel like. It was very widespread, very crazy. Very crazy. At least in terms of widespread. I don't know, we did have a lot in April. So probably since early May. Late April, early May. Yesterday was one of the biggest, most widespread outbreaks. Because that stuff stretched from western Nebraska, southwest Kansas, all the way up into northern North Dakota, northern Minnesota, even into the main portion of it, western New York and Ohio. This stuff was associated with a different ordeal right there. I mean, it was this whole area, man. Very, very widespread. Let's see if we got the new HRRR rendering in over here yet. It should be. Yes, it is. So I must have accidentally deleted that line. I want to draw the convection again. It's a little bit too far east. Let's redo that. Let's try to do it as perfect as we can so we can see how decent or how bad the HRRR run is. So there you go. Here's the newest HRRR. We're going to go to precipitation and see how bad it rendered. Yikes. Yikes. That's very bad. That is very, very bad. It's all way too slow. And the southern portion of it is non-existent. It didn't do that bad with the northern side. Or even into Wisconsin. But it did very bad once it got into Illinois and Iowa. The main event. It did very bad with the main event. How many times have I heard the HRRR? Probably into the thousands at this point. Most likely. Might be into the tens of thousands, depending on how long you've been a weather fan. How long you've been a weather enthusiast. So we'll be able to see the next meso-analysis as well. Be able to see what that has. Let's not go there. Let's go here. We'll do this blue one. There you go. So this is the still the 15Z meso-analysis. We're going to wait to see what that has for 16Z. Which is noon. I need permission to leave the house, but my mom is sleeping. What? Bro wants Catman to give him permission to leave? Yeah, very sloppy on the new HRRR. Just not sure what today's going to hold. Just know that the environment is very favorable and it easily could be a huge event. Easily could be a huge event today. Let's see. Let's go to the HREF, see what that shows here. I typed it wrong. Are you done rendering? Because for some reason, hey, it is starting to render. Not actually finished, sadly. I don't know why it's so slow on their actual site. It's very slow. I wonder if it's because it's a big weather day. A lot of people using it. Even though the SPC sites have been fairly slow. Isn't it crazy the outlook we have right now, y'all? It is June 11th. We've got a moderate for severe weather, 15 sig 2 and a 60 sig 1 wind. And a 15 sig 1 hail. This is one of the highest end events of the year. And it's in June. Thank you, Brighton, for the $10 donation. Greatly appreciate that. Really appreciate that. Imagine they add a sig 2 to the wind risk. I doubt it. I don't think there'll be many changes to the next outlook. The only good change might be a disextension of the slight and the marginal over here. Maybe the enhanced as well. Oh, excuse me. Do I dare show you guys 14Z NATOcast, which verified almost perfectly yesterday? Yesterday, 14Z NATOcast actually nailed, exactly nailed where we had 3 multi-vortex tornadoes, apparently, according to Chaser reports. You want to see what it has for today? Yesterday, it had a decent little 15% tor risk in north central, northwestern Missouri. Today, 45%. 45% today on 14Z NATOcast. And this actually verified to slightly overperformed yesterday. One of the highest outputs of the year right here. So, despite surface analysis not looking the best in my personal opinion, everything is ringing the bell for a huge outbreak day today. NATOcast, HREF, both high risks for tornadoes. StormNet absolutely exploding for wind and tor probs. HRRR showed 4-5 semi-discrete supercells on the 14Z. The 15Z, not as many discrete supercells. Definitely more sloppy on this one as well. But the HRRR is not the best model, so I don't even know why I bothered looking at it. It's way more important to just keep using surface analysis. So that's your newest NATOcast right there. What is that? It's either using the 14 or 13Z HRRR. So that's either using this HRRR and this HRRR. It's also paired with the HREF and the RAP as well. You see the RAP just has record smashing over here is what it seems like. Record breaking recovery and destabilization of our risk area. I mean, it's super rapid. You go from right in here, about 500 instability to almost 5,000. 500 to 5,000 cape in 5 hours. 4 to 5 hours. You destabilize over 4,000 cape in 4 to 5 hours, according to this. That's absurd. But it is June, and not gonna lie, that's what June does. June ends up having some of the most crazy instability. It's just not often does it actually get taken advantage of with all of the supercells and thunderstorms. Most of the time it's just chilling there and is rarely used. Or if it is used, it's used in the form of a damaging wind event like today. However, according to everything else, I mean, everything else is lighting up like no tomorrow. Lapse rates are going to have to change quick. It's still in the early afternoon. This is when lapse rates are pretty much the lowest. Lapse rates are going to be the lowest from roughly 1 a.m. to like 7. And it's still 11:12 Central. So your lapse rates are just now probably starting to increase. And I mean, that clearing does look better. We might have a little window of clearing here in about 2 hours before storms start popping off. Storms are going to pop off close to probably 2, 3 o'clock is what I'm thinking. That isn't clearing. Compared to this compared to this is definitely more clearing. You're going to have some breaks in the skies out here in southwest Iowa. Southwest Iowa, northwestern Missouri, you're going to have some clearing there. It's not great clearing, but it is definitely better than the old layers of thick cloud cover in front of that. Like, if you compare these two, this is, in my opinion, I'd consider this clearing when you compare it to this. Neither of them are great. You know, you really want clearing to look like this, like out in western Kansas, but compared to where our MCS is and behind the MCS looks clear. That tornado watch goes till 4. I don't know if that's going to be the case. They might cancel that an hour early to put in the watch. It depends when stuff fires. But we get a new SPC outlook here in about 15 minutes. We'll see what that has. Trying to see what this stuff is. Give me just some moment, y'all. Okay. So, if you are just happening to tune in right now, we are in the early stages of a destabilizing environment across our moderate risk area. We've already had one round of severe storms make its way through much of the state of central and southern Iowa, and that has now progressed and weakened into northwestern Illinois. And as it's weakening, it's going to allow for more instability to build through the day, and we are likely to have a dangerous severe weather and tornado outbreak across northern Illinois, southeastern Iowa, and maybe into southern Wisconsin. The risk for multiple strong tornadoes exists, a few intense, and maybe even one violent, and there is the chance for a long-tracked strong plus tornado as well, if any supercells can be discrete ahead of the cold front and not as messy as what some models show. There's also, losing my voice already, that's not a good sign. There's also a 60% SIG 1 wind risk that is out here across eastern Iowa into far northeastern Missouri, northern Illinois, and southern Wisconsin. That means there's a very, very high chance for 60 to 70 mile an hour winds. Multiple wind gusts could also approach 80 miles per hour, and a few wind gusts could even near 90 miles per hour. Hail threat is the lowest of your concern if you live in this risk area. We still can't rule out a few hailstones upwards of 2.5 inches in diameter with any discrete supercells. But when you compare that to the hail and when you compare the hail threat to the wind in the Tor is much higher. Losing my train of thought. I really want to see this HREF, but it's not loading in. So, very, very high-end event, again, is expected today in that level 4 out of 5 moderate, and in the level 3 out of 5 enhanced. We'll also have to monitor. We could see that enhanced risk expand a little bit further south into possibly as far south as just northwest of Indianapolis. If the NWS and Storm Prediction Center thinks that our line might survive a little bit longer. And if we do see that expansion, it would probably be a last-second expansion. Maybe they could do that at the 4 o'clock update, but I feel like it would probably be a last-second expansion at like 9 p.m. Eastern. Everything done by Cedar Rapids? Nope. Just starting, buddy. It is just starting. You got multiple waves of rain in your area. You already went through one significant line of storms, and there's more storms behind that are occurring. That could pose a risk for 50 mile an hour winds, some heavy rain, some small hail, and then the big event will be later on. The main event will be later on, and it's very close to Cedar Rapids. Either it's going to be just southeast of Cedar Rapids, or it's going to include Cedar Rapids, where the highest risk will be. Look at this. This is funny. You've got rain all around this storm, and dead center of it, you've got a severe thunderstorm. It's like this whole shield of rain around this storm, and this storm's able to thrive off of the little environment in the middle that's not being taken up by slop-fest rain. I will tell you this, the more rain you get in Cedar Rapids now, probably the less chance for severe weather you'll have later in the afternoon. So if we keep seeing like all of this crap vection here train over Cedar Rapids or the northern side of Cedar Rapids, that should help later today be messy and not as high of a severe threat. So if all this messy stuff can stay in place, our highest severe weather risk will probably be focused in this area here. That's probably where our highest risk will be today. The northern extent is definitely a question mark, and the southeast extent is definitely a question mark. Welcome to what morning convection does. It creates a lot of uncertainty. You don't know how far north the warm sector is going to go, especially when you have overperforming morning convection. This is apparently your new mesoanalysis, and it looks borderline the same. I don't see any major differences here between this mesoanalysis and the last one. The biggest difference... Hold on, I'm trying to compare it. Are we sure this is updated? I don't think this is updated. It says it's updated, but this literally, legit, It hasn't. Because I'm looking at the old one and it literally looks like the exact same picture here. This has not updated, despite Mesoanalysis saying it has. It has not. So we'll come back to that. Maybe just before the SPC Outlook or just after. I'm more so convinced that the warm sector won't go as far north as what model outputs show simply due to morning convection. Yep, I agree, Sam. Even though NATOcast has a 45% tour, it's not too far north, but it is pretty far north. I think NATOcast actually is probably one of the more accurate outlooks because it doesn't go that far north. I could actually agree with this a little bit more. But yeah, we'll have to see how far north or south that main environment goes. New severe thunderstorm warning for Burlington and Fort Madison in west central Illinois. Make sure you guys get away from doors and windows there. That's your new severe thunderstorm warning. Tour possible tag as well. Mesoanalysis still looks the same. And again, we will be getting an SPC outlook here in about 7 minutes or so. So we should see that new outlook, but I don't, like I said earlier, I don't expect to see much more of a change from the SPC outlook from the morning one to the new one here in 6 minutes. Most of our models just have that convection too far south and west. Here's something to think of here. This is the NAM. And even though it doesn't have convection as far to the south, the MCS is already leaving the area. You know, the NAM had this MCS hanging around till 2 p.m. It was still here across northwest Illinois and southern Wisconsin, and it's there right now. It's already across southern Wisconsin and northwestern Illinois. The thing is, just the tail end of it is hanging around further to the south than we were thinking. And that's creating a lot of uncertainty. We'll go to the HRRR sub-hourly here in just a second. We're going to redraw this. We're going to draw the main convection once again. Redraw that main area of convection. And we'll look at how the sub-hourly HRRR is handling it. And this is for right now. And you can see, once again, the main MCS is actually much further to the east and already leaving the main risk area in eastern Iowa. But the tail end is still there, and the HRRR is not handling that well. So you've kind of got a mix here. Your MCS is leaving faster than expected, which could result in a higher severe threat. But you also have the tail end of your MCS that is sticking around longer than expected, which could decrease the severe threat. So I kind of think it equals out there. One is increasing the threat, one is decreasing the threat, and they kind of equal out. And there's a new SPC outlook, and they have shrunk the moderate. They've expanded the slight risk here further into Pennsylvania. They have expanded the enhanced risk already a little bit further into Ohio and Indiana. And even into Missouri. A little bit further expansion of the enhanced risk there. They've disextended the moderate, the enhanced, the slight, the marginal, all from the west. So a lot of expansion and disexpansion changes, but I don't think they probably didn't change any of the probabilities. But they expanded the slight risk there in the Mid-Atlantic. They expanded the enhanced risk there in Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, maybe even a little bit of Michigan, and disexpanded much of the west-northwest side of the moderate, the enhanced, the slight, and the marginal. Severe storms are about to start popping off across western Pennsylvania as well. Those should begin similarly to when our event in eastern, southeastern Iowa begins, right around 3 o'clock. We just got a new mesoscale discussion for a likely severe thunderstorm watch to be issued in western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, western Maryland, north central Virginia, and much of West Virginia. There's your new update from Mesoanalysis. And you know what? It actually has destabilized very rapidly. But the northern extent of your warm sector over here has barely changed. This has rapidly destabilized in front of the MCS, but this has barely moved anywhere and barely destabilized. Actually, it's moved a little south. This has actually moved a bit south, whereas this has moved north. So what that could allow for is that could actually allow for the tail end of this MCS to survive longer as it moves into central Illinois, where that destabilization has occurred already. So, yeah, we'll wait for this SPC outlook to fully come out. Here it is. There is your new moderate risk area. 15 SIG-2 still maintained. 60% SIG-1 still maintained, and a 30% non-SIG wind still maintained in far eastern U.S. And a little expansions of that 30% and 30 SIG-1 out there in Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Missouri. Very small expansion and small disexpansions to the west side of that risk. And then they have shrunk the hatched hail risk to only where the opportunity of those prefrontal supercells is located, from northern Missouri into far southeastern Wisconsin, far northeastern Illinois. The reason for the smaller moderate is just simply because of the morning convection. That morning convection just shrunk the western side. Potential for widespread to intense damaging winds, some 75 plus miles per hour, large hail, and several tornadoes, some of which may be strong to intense. The possibility of multiple tornadic supercells and widespread severe wind damage is possible. Let's see. Multiple strong to intense EF2 to EF3 plus tornadoes given enhanced lower level wind shear. Isolated large to very large hail may also occur. Widespread damaging winds appears likely across much of northern and central Illinois into lower southern Michigan and northern Indiana. Both ongoing clusters and eventual upscale growth into a MCS will likely produce severe damaging winds, some of which could be 75 miles per hour or greater. It remains uncertain, but at least some tornado threat could exist in Michigan, and it will likely continue eastward into the Great Lakes in northern Indiana this evening. So there you go. Forecast remains on track, just small adjustments to the risk area on the newest update. That decreased your overall risk if you do live further west towards Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, out in this area. Y'all's risk has decreased a little bit more than expected because our MCS has lingered around a little bit longer than we were thinking. Yeah, I do believe the wording is actually a little stronger than the last SPC outlook. That wording seemed a little bit more intense. So we will wait and see. Yeah, several tornadoes, some strong to intense was the wording. So yeah, there's your new outlook on a better scale so you could see it a bit more in depth with the town names there. Like I said, they pushed that further away from Cedar Rapids, so if you are in Cedar Rapids, your risk is decreased slightly. Not enough to where you don't want to be weather aware, but enough to where you're not at risk for 80 plus mile an hour winds and multiple tornadoes. That risk has shifted a little bit further off to the east, and they actually did drop your tornado risk quite considerably in Cedar Rapids. So if you're in Cedar Rapids, looking better and better right now. There's your new outlook again. There's your main risk, still level 4 out of 5 in place. Still a 15 SIG 2 in place. Still a 60% SIG 1 in place. Still a 15% SIG 1 hail in place. So again, that's your tornado outlook, wind outlook, and hail outlook. Let's go back to your current radar again out here. Burlington in western Illinois. These storms have pushed a little bit further off to the northeast over the last 30 minutes and have kind of faded out a bit more. But we still do have a severe thunderstorm warning for Burlington. A lot of lightning, a lot of heavy rain, some very small hail, and gusty winds upwards of 60 miles per hour will be possible. Wind gust up to 60 miles per hour is the highest and largest problem. So we'll continue to watch that severe thunderstorm warning. Also another severe out here in Wellman. That really is falling apart. It's like a borderline severe. Barely worth the severe warning right there. Still want to be away from doors and windows just in case. When is Madison going to see the worst of it? Well, you guys have a pretty strong line moving through right now. 40 mile an hour winds moving through. This is the morning line. So get away from doors and windows. Don't go outside. That's moving through right now. That's one of our stronger damaging wind threats here. Ongoing in the U.S. at this very moment. However, the worst line could be later today. The problem is, so that MCS is very strong and very widespread, which means it's going to completely take up that environment in southern Wisconsin. And the question is, can that MCS get out of there quick enough for the environment to re-destabilize to become a huge issue in southern Wisconsin? Or does that environment not destabilize as much and the main event stay off to your south? Somewhere in here, we're going to have a sharp cutoff on where that best environment is. So either Madison could get very unlucky and you could end up with the highest risk for, 60 to 80 mile an hour wind gust, a brief tornado or two, maybe one strong, and 1.5 inch hail. Or Madison could just end up with some heavy rain later this evening because the environment was never able to recover. So either one or the other. Regardless, I would be hyper weather aware, keep a very close eye on the forecast, as the environment could quickly destabilize, or the environment may not destabilize. But either way, you're going to want to know which scenario is more likely. Either way, you're going to want to pay close attention to the weather. We do have another severe up here. Observed 60 mile an hour winds. This kind of seems like a... That's not where the MCS is, so it's not what I was thinking. But that is definitely an area that could see 50 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts there. Around the Greenwood and north of Greenwood area. Alright, anything else I want to show here? That's mesoanalysis, that's a NATO cast. We can get rid of that. There's your new SPC outlook. Once again there. Apparently I had 2 NATO casts open. I know, right, Catman? That's your new HRRR, which doesn't seem to be handling things well anyways. Man, I have so many tabs open. Who opened all these tabs on my computer, bro? Only supposed to have like 6 tabs open. I think I have over 20. I've got like an additional like 8 over here. I'm going to go ahead and close real quick too. Finally, HREF is done and we can finally look at that. And there's our tiny itty bitty little high risk that HREF has for some reason. But there you go. Now what I really wanted to see was the wind. Oh, yep. Just as high as I was thinking. Now remember, this only goes up to 60%. So 45% is just one away from the highest risk on this categorical risk scale, because this is still the old scale. This is the scale from over a year ago, which is why they are closing operations with the HREF, and this site will go down, I believe, in early August. I believe that's when they're closing it down, right around there. And there's another opinion. You have 2. You have the actual outlook based on those models, and then the STP based outlook. There's your 4-hour wind probabilities. You could see they really start to blow up here. Really start to blow up about 3-4 p.m. Somewhere between 2 and 4 is when our risk will really start to go and explode there. And then your peak begins about 5-6 p.m. and lasts all the way until probably about 11 a.m. There's your tornado risk doing the same. Blows up about 3-4 p.m. Peaks about 5 p.m. all the way until tornado risk dies a little bit sooner. Tornado risk dies closer to 10 o'clock. Wind risk will go closer to 11 a.m. midnight, or 11 p.m. midnight. Let's see, anything else on here that we might want to show? Probability of updrafts here. Wow. Yeah, and your hotspot on this is easily southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois. I just don't I don't understand why it's still that far north. I'm not convinced on that. I'm not convinced on it being that far north. Here's the members. So these are all the 12Z members. There's your HRRR. There's your HRWF NSSL. And let's just see if any of these are accurate, by the way. Let's just go back to now and see if any of these have good convection in southeast Iowa, northeast Missouri, west central Illinois. So HRRR, nope. NSSL, nope. ARW, almost. FV3, definitely not. NAM3K, pretty good. HRRR again, nope. None of these. Oh, well, that one's okay. That one's not horrible. And that has a very far northern extent there. But that is pretty bad on the MCS not being up in Madison. So, technically, on this batch of 12Z runs, the NAM is somehow the most accurate, and that's what that shows. Which the NAM, in my opinion, has the highest risk from southern Wisconsin down to central Illinois. Right in there. And then I do want to check your severe weather tab, and I do want to go to your mean instability. So this is the average instability through your models. And again, most of them cut off near that Chicago area. So I really don't think the highest risk is going to spread much further north than northern Illinois. I really don't think we're going to see anything too crazy in southern Wisconsin. And if we do, it's only going to be within like 4 or 5 counties in far southern Wisconsin. There's your minimum, and look at your minimum. Which I wouldn't say that's what we're seeing right now. That's definitely underdoing it, but that's your minimum cape. And then there's your max. Which definitely has a high-end threat into southern Wisconsin there. Continuing wind risk for 40 to 50 mile an hour winds here for Janesville. That's going to go towards Milwaukee in the next hour. Let's see. Oh, man. That's loud. Catman, what's funny about that is there's, out of those moderates, like 2 of those produced over 20 tornadoes. Like the person puts bust right over it, and in the background you see probably over 300 wind reports, probably over 150 hail reports, and probably over 20 tornado reports, and they label it a big bust. And then for the other one, you see probably over 500 wind reports, over 200 hail reports, and a big area right on top of the moderate that the SPC had with like 20 reports in the small area. So that's funny. The only one that was actually a bust tornado-wise was the one in my area, March 16th, 2026, where we only had a brief tornado in southwest North Carolina and then some brief spin-ups in Maryland and southern Delaware. All of them were brief and very weak. And that was the only one that wasn't a moderate for tornadoes, by the way. So that's funny that they say the last 3 moderates for tornadoes, and the first thing they include is a storm that actually ended up as a enhanced risk for tornadoes. So Obviously, somebody's not very informed there. Because that's not even a moderate for tornadoes, and they called it a moderate. So that's all I need to know to skip that video and not take it seriously. The last 3 moderates includes a risk that's not a moderate. Like, what? You gotta love it. Gotta love it. But we're probably going to go ahead and conclude our stream. I know we got a lot of people watching, so if you haven't already, I'd appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button with a notification bell set to all. I'm going to go get some food and do stuff for like an hour, maybe 2, and we will be right back here in about an hour or 2. So you stick around the channel, keep refreshing it if you'd like. I'm going to schedule a live stream right after this live stream, and you're welcome to chat in that if you'd like to till I go live. But I'm going to conclude for just an hour or so. So before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell set to all so you know when I do go live. And also hit that like button on your way out. Share the stream and the channel with your family, friends, social media. It's really, really, really appreciated. And we will be back here. And probably, I'm thinking right about probably 2. Like I said, probably only going to be an hour break here, just a quick break so I can go eat some food. So that way I'm energized and ready for tonight. We're going to end on a very odd time, but that's okay because I want to go get some food in my system so I can be here for the rest of the day. So I will be back here. In about an hour. So don't worry, just a little intermission. Not much is going to happen between now and then. And then we will be back at it for probably the rest of the day for coverage. So I will see y'all in about an hour. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the support on the live stream today, helping me reach almost 6,000 people with the word of severe weather today. And like I said, I will be back later on. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell set to all so you know when I go back live. And I will see you in about an hour or maybe a little bit over an hour, right around then. We'll see exactly when. But again, I'll schedule a live stream right after this one is over so that way you guys can go chat in that. It'll take me about 5 minutes after this stream ends to schedule that. So with that being said, I will see you guys in about an hour or a little bit more. Stay safe, watch the severe weather, and see you in a little bit. Thank you, Mods for Mod and Chat, and everyone for being here. Goodbye. stay safe, watch the severe weather, and I'll see you guys in the next live stream that I do in about an hour. Have a great rest of your day if you don't tune in. Goodbye.